Well, very difficult to speak after the presentation from David. And in fact, I'm so expert that I'm bringing questions more than answers. First, I want to deliver my respectful greetings to Your Beatitude and Eminence, Metropolitan Shium, locum tenens of the Patriarchate Throne of Georgia, and then to Your Excellency, the Prime Minister of Georgia, and to the estimated member of the government, the Minister of Culture and Minister of Education. Thank you very much for being here. And thank you to Father Kyrion and all the members of the Gelati Rehabilitation Committee. Has been a real privilege to work with them. So what country is Georgia if the lieutenant of the Patriarch, if the Prime Minister and if the Minister of Culture and Education and Director of a university attends a lecture, a conference of conservation of cultural heritage. This is a place that I love. It's something really extraordinary, this event. These show that this is a country that looks at its future, because the future of a country is in its cultural heritage. And Georgia is an extraordinary country in terms of cultural heritage. So I am impressed for this, and I'm also very glad. It is 1 year that we came, is 15 months that we came here the first time to see the mosaic of Gelati. And at that time, our Georgian friends told us that anyone who comes in Georgia one time, then will come back many times. Well, we came back 5 times in 1 year, and is not enough. Definitely is not enough. Going to the experience that a professional can have in the field of conservation of mosaics, I can tell you that is not useful, because every mosaic is a different story in itself. And in fact, when 1 year ago our colleagues and friends asked my opinion about the mosaic of Gelati, I was only able to give questions, not answers. 1 year is past, we have been working, and today we still have questions, but luckily we also have several answers to give to you. I would like to start this, my presentation just with few seconds dedicated to the memory of Lado Gurgenadze, who is an estimate colleague from the Department of Monuments Protection of Georgia, who passed over a couple of weeks ago, and who I had the privilege to meet personally, and to understand his attitude of generosity in sharing the information about what happened on the Gelati Museum during 1984 and 1990, when a team of fantastic restorers from the Department of Monument Protection restored the mosaic. And also he gave me an incredible treasure of pictures, photographs and slides of what they did, and drawings. All this material has been extremely important for us to understand a little bit more of the state of conservation of the mosaic of Gelati. So let me start reminding together some of the questions that we had 1 year ago. The first one, the basic one, is the mosaic an original work of the 12th century? Basically, was the mosaic made at the same time the monastery of Gelati was built? Sounds a silly question, but is a fundamental question. And then, was made directly in situ, or was made in a studio and then transferred and applied on the wall? Or again, did they use new material specifically produced for this mosaic, or did they reuse materials coming from other mosaics as it was common at that time? And is the mosaic at risk? What is the most serious problem for the mosaic? Do we know the origins of the 22 millimeters detachments of the mosaics? The restoration of Carlo Bacurazze was a good work. The metal pins that he applied will be removed. The detached area, the 22 millimeters, will be filled and consolidated, or will be left open as a ventilation sections. Will the gaps, I mean all the missing tesserae, will be replaced? And then, is it technically possible to reduce the risk for the mosaic? So these were the questions that we saw on the table only 1 year ago. So let's see together what happened during this year. And please excuse me if I will have to enter into some boring scientific details, but I don't pretend that you trust me, so I want to show you the evidences of my deductions. And let's start. We know there are technologies to understand how a mosaic is filled, is attached, is consistent with the wall, but we are old people, we are still related to the hand knocking, and then to go with a confrontation with the technologies. So the first work that we did was trying to identify how much the mosaic was attached to the wall. And this was extremely interesting, and the result of this investigation was, I would say, difficult to believe. Difficult to believe because 89% of the mosaic is detached from the wall. Means that this is not a problem, this is a nightmare. We almost could not believe that this number was true, but then when we received the report of Carlo Bacurazze, we saw that he wrote that he estimated that 80% of the mosaic was already detached at that time. So this was a very important confrontation that we had, stating that unfortunately our estimate is close to the reality. And then we started to study the surfaces of the mosaic, because the mosaic is a page of a book. You have everything written on the surfaces of the mosaic. We use also the help of 3D scanning of the survey of the surfaces, and out of this study we started to accumulate some technical informations that help us understanding how the mosaic was made, which was not known before. We also started to get familiar with the problem of the souls that very brilliantly Stephen before explained. We arrived more or less at the same conclusion as the research that they were made in Germany. The souls are present. They confirm a certitude. No matter from where the souls come, they need to be removed. Of course, it's extremely important to know the source because we have to prevent in the future the same happening. But from this analysis, we also understood that there is something that is difficult to understand, such, for instance, the presence of nitrates, which are related not to a mineral source, but to an organic source. So it will be very important and tricky to understand the origin of all this. Studying the surfaces of the mosaic, we enter to the technology of the making of the tessere. The tessere, we know that they are tessere, but there are very different kinds of tessere. There are stone tessere, there are glass tesseres, and they can tell us many different things depending on their nature. We could analyze, we have been authorized to take some samples of tessere, and we send them to the Institute for the Glass Studies in Venice, and they gave us interesting answers about how the tessere are made. You have seen before how much the mosaic is detached, and after knocking, we proceeded with the thermovision survey and with the georadar survey, which are the latest technologies to detect the hollow spaces into fabric structures. And all these confirmed our map. And then we asked from the medicine an endoscope, and we entered, literally entered into the mosaic. You can see here the other side of the mosaic, because we are almost 3 meters inside, and you can see the hollow space containing spiders, insects, and any other kind of materials. I am very glad to show you this picture, but you can imagine how many nights we spent without sleeping after detecting this situation. And then we carried out some tests for cleaning the mosaic and for removing the souls. Every mosaic, as I said, has a different reality, so we had to taste the proper material in the proper time applications. And what we want to do is to clean the mosaic, but we don't want to touch the patina of the mosaic. So that's why we define a system that will be slow, very defensive, and very repetitive, in order to give us the opportunity to stop just on time, just before what is needed. What is not understood today is that what we see is not the mosaic. What we see today is the mosaic plus a layer of smoke on top of it. And the test of cleaning revealed the real color of the mosaics that, believe me, are breathtaking. We all are amazed by the beauty of the mosaic, but we still don't know what is the mosaic in reality. You can have a small idea here if you see the confrontation between this area and this and this. So the result of, the cleaning of the mosaic is kind of aesthetic. The real job is consolidating it. But unfortunately, the result that the cleaning will give will be 100 times more astonishing than the result on consolidation. Luckily, we will do both. Another aspect was to find a way of cleaning the glass and the silver tessere. Is a little different method, but also in this case, we know now how to do, and also in this case, we expect phenomenal differences and result. Is a process that will take long, and is a process that will take long before applying this, because we will not touch the mosaic surface with cleaning until the mosaic will be entirely consolidated and safe. We know that Carlo Bacurazze applied metal pins in brass. Now we know that that work was providential and was very, very well done. But we also suspected that they did other work that we don't see by eye. So that's why we use the technology to detect the presence of eventual other metal, and we identified 113 more elements in metal that we don't see from the surface. All that will be interest of our work, because some of them will have to be removed. This is an example, a photograph that Lado gave to me of the brass pin that they used. By that time was a very high technology. Also the fact that they used brass and not iron was a phenomenal decision that they took. And then the solid aspect of the work, that is the consolidation of the detachment of the mosaics and the filling of the gap. We opened a collaboration with the Faculty of Engineering of the University of Bergamo, and they tested a material based on lime, specifically done to fill the voids without producing much weight. And the formula that they produced is adding air into the mortar. So this means that we don't add any strange material. We will also make the mortar light, 50% lighter than in reality, by mixing it air. It sounds very simple, and in fact it is simple. But a simple solution normally works better than the complicated one. So we will go to that direction. The test confirmed that the process can be effective in Gelati, so we are pretty confident that we know what is to be done. An aspect that is extremely important for us is the preventive conservation. Is a miracle that the mosaic is still there, because 89% means that we have no idea how the mosaic is standing. So we don't want to force the miracles. We want to put ourselves and the mosaic on the safe side. So we planned an immediate action of building a structure that will hold the mosaic in an independent way. This structure will be totally independent from the scaffolding because the scaffolding produces vibration and is extremely dangerous to transmit the vibration of the scaffolding to the mosaics through props. So this structure will be based down on the floor and will go up to the top in a self-standing way without interference and interaction with the mosaic. Before applying this structure, we will apply a cotton veil on the surfaces, and at that point we will start to sleep safe. And we will give the possibility to the engineers and to the architect to work on the roof and on the structure of the church without taking the risk of making a huge disaster. Let's go to see some of the results of the investigation. The mosaic is applied on a double strata of lime as a very normal way of doing. What is interesting is that immediately when they applied the lime on the walls and before locating the tessera, they applied a paint layer on the surface, a fresco paint layer made of yellow, red, and gray. You can see a preliminary map of these colors between the tesserae, and at the very end, the use of the colors was to guide the mosaicist in applying the tesserae. Don't forget that the tesserae are applied on a fresh mortar. This means that you don't have, the mosaicist did not have a long time to apply the tessera. So any system you have to speed up the work of the master, of the mosaicist, is a help. And on the second hand, the color applied comes through in between the tesserae. So the mosaic of Gelati is not only the result of the tesserae, is the result of the tesserae plus the color in the background. And these make a real masterpiece. An example you can see here, the color is showing in the empty space between the tessera and was also used as an extra pictorial effect on the final result. We are not speaking of mosaicists here. We are speaking of real masters. They really know what to do and how to play with this. The analysis of this material showed us that they are ochres and they were applied when the mortar was fresh, because we found lines of carbonatation into the color, which tell us that the majority of this color is original, is not something applied over. But let's go a little outer and let's see how the tessera are made. So 94% of the tessera are made of glass. 5.5 are made of stone, local stones, and 0.5% are made of terracotta. But what interests us is the group of tessera made of glass. Why? Because today we have technologies to understand how the glass was made and try to understand the date of a mosaic. And in fact, we have extremely interesting results coming from Venice. They, just to briefly to tell you how a glass is made. The glass is made by taking sand, mixing sand with calcium carbonate, and then putting on the fire, high temperature, over 1000 degrees, adding something called melting fluxes. The melting fluxes are extremely important because they let the sand melting down at lower temperature. And the melting fluxes are very clearly identified through chemical analysis and electronic microscopes, and they are identified in general in three groups. The natron-based melting fluxes. The natron is a salt that you can find in the desert of Egypt, and this is a material that was used until the 8th and the 9th century. And then you have the second group that is made using hashes of plants growing on a salty areas. In normally the Nile, I don't know estuario in English, but where the river goes into the sea, and you burn these plants, you produce an ash, and you use the ash as a flux. And the third group is made by using the two groups together. So the plant's ash flux was used immediately after the natron ones. So this means that give us an age of 9th century ahead, and the intermediate was used between the 9th and the 13th century. If we put together the tessere in Gelati, we can find the three typologies. So we have a tessere done before the 9th century, we have tessere made between the 9th and the 13th, and we have tessere made after the 15th century. I will tell you what all this means. After that we speak of colorants, because the colorants are another element that are added to the glass to produce the color tessera, and this is an element that can give us an extra possibility to date. Because in the case of the blue, for instance, we found cobalt associated with iron and traces of lead and copper, which date this tessere exactly at the 13th century. So at the end, these tell us that the mosaic of Gelati is an original mosaic of the same time of the building of the monastery. This may look normal to some of you, but I can tell you that this is the first time in my career that I can say we were able to date a mosaic. So it's not so, it's pretty exceptional. And then the gold and the silver tessera. A large majority of the tessera in Gelati are made of silver and gold tessera. How these kind of tessera are made? They are made of one body of glass. In the case of Gelati, a 5mm base of glass, then a layer of gold or a layer of silver. In the case of gold is 0.3 micron in thickness, and then another layer of glass called the cartellina that is cooked a second time over the gold leaf. And In terms of the gold in Gelati, we have a gold pure for 97.5% plus 2.5% of silver, which means the highest purity of gold that you can imagine, and also means that in order to do the tessere in Gelati, they used coins, not reused gold. That this tells us a little, very much about who commissioned the mosaic, which means the king and the emperor. Speaking of the cartellina, this is a typical pizza. We call pizza as Italian because remind us something of glass, on top of which there is a leaf of gold, and on top of this there is a cartellina that is another stratum of glass. Then from the pizza you cut the tessere, the measure you need. Given that we know the alloy of gold, we know that at that time the coin that were used was the perdion of Emperor John II, and the weight was 4.3 grams. And we also know that in order to prepare 1 square meter of gold tessere, you need 3 grams of gold. So today we know that to prepare the gold tessere of Gelati, it was necessary to have 21 hyperion to produce the tessere. The size of the tessere. We have different sizes. They go from 8 millimeters by 8 millimeters for the gold and silver ties. That means that for 1 square meter you need 15,000 tessere. We know the color figure in the body of the Virgin and the angels with an average of 10 millimeters by 10 millimeters, which gives 10,000 tessere per square meter. And then you have the stone in the hands and in the faces, which are 5 millimeters by 5 millimeters, giving 40,000 tessere per square meter. The total of these numbers gives for Gelati 681,000 tessere, of which 537,000 in gold and silver, 188,000 in colored glass, 36,000 in stone. And because the Gelati mosaic that we have today is about 50% of the original, we know that in origin they used 1,283,000 tessere, of which 1 million was in gold and silver. But if we imagine these numbers and we put the 1 million gold tessere one together by the other, we produce a long line which connects the Gelati monastery to the Mozzameta monastery until Baghrati Cathedral. Is a coincidence? I am not very sure that is a coincidence. There are also strange things on the mosaics. We found many round silver tessere and other elements that have nothing to do with the mosaic. So we believe that this belongs to a reuse of some tessere from an older mosaics. And this also justifies why we found gold tessere that were produced before the 9th century. So we know that into the huge richness of the mosaic of Gelati, we have several tessere who started their life 2-3 centuries before, coming from other mosaics. We also have terracotta used for some tessera, and analyzing the terracotta, we discover that that belongs to dishes and to vessels typical of this region. You can see here the glass face of a dish. We also found other strange things. For instance, we found many tessere that are round. What this means? These are the edges of the pizza of the original colors. Because when you produce a color, you produce a plate that has round edges that you cut to do the mosaic. This is the demonstration that the color mosaics, the color tessera for Gelati are new ones. And they were cut at the same time of making the mosaic, most possibly in place. The palette of the color is made of 22 color. An average color of Byzantine mosaics, it's 6, 8, 10. Here in Gelati, we have 22. These tell you what we are speaking about. Some history of Gelati. We know from the archive that the church, the monastery, was put to fire in 1508 and 1759. This means that 50% of the mosaic went lost in that occasion, and the rest was covered with a black smoke layer. In the 16th century and in the 19th century, the mosaic was restored 2 times. And in that occasion, a new plaster was applied on the mosaic itself, on part of the mosaic. They were not able to consolidate the mosaic in situ, so they decided to replaster it on top and to paint the missing part. This is an extraordinary evidence for history of restoration. And there is a question why they did what was gold, why they did this dark blue. Because the rest of the mosaic was covered with smoke that is dark blue. So they restore the mosaic at the time when the mosaic was still covered with the smoke of the fires. Another important step of the story of the restoration of Gelati is the work that Carlo Bacurazze, with the team of the Department of Monuments Protection, did during 7 years, 84 until 90, with a team of 4 restorers. They did really an incredible job, and we were astonished by the methodology they used. They documented everything, and they did not take risk. Carlo Bacurazze say, I am sure that in the future there will be technologies to consolidate the mosaics, but today we don't have the technology, so we put pin in brass. Who else would have taken this careful attitude? We must be really grateful to them. I would say more. If there was not the Bacurazze intervention, today Gelati would be without the mosaic. So we must be really grateful to that team. The other thing that they did, they removed the plaster applied during the restoration of the 16th century. You see, this is when they are removing the black plaster and they are discovering the mosaic below. And because they were not able to consolidate in situ the mosaic, they removed the mosaic from the wall and they put it back. What is precious also from Bakuradze is the photograph that he gave to us, showing that before them there were other restorations that they used different techniques to restore it. And he also identified the damage that we have on the face of the Madonna, understanding that they are bullets of a rifle. This is a genial intuition that we have been wondering why those damages. So somebody shoot as sacrilege against the face of the Madonna. Carlo Bakuradze was an artist, and the Museum of Kutaisi today has on display two works of him representing very precisely the Madonna and the Archangel of Gelati. But he also gave us important documents, and I don't want to read this, but Bakuradze says that in the 70s, somebody opened a stone quarry in Mezzameta, and the quarry was producing terrible explosions every day, and the explosions were damaging the mosaic. So they organized, thanks to the Georgia press of the time, a popular campaign to stop the quarry and close the quarry. And they succeeded. These things, I think, can happen only in Georgia. They succeeded, they stopped and closed the quarry, and the vibration stopped. But this also helped us understanding the origin of the detachment of 22 millimeters. So it was for the water infiltration, but was also for the explosions from the quarry. Today, we know that 2.5% of the actual mosaic is lost. So we know that there are 16,000 tessera missing. So this is the state of conservation. What we suggest, what we recommend to do. We are here at the moment. We recommend to start immediately with a preventive conservation campaign to keep the mosaic safe, to publish the result of what has been done, to proceed with the restoration of the roof in order to stop the infiltration of water, and only when this phase will be over to proceed with phase 4, that is the conservation of the mosaic, not before. The preventive conservation is based on the idea of doing some preliminary conservation treatment in order to allow us to apply the veil of cotton, but mainly to build the protective structure that we have designed and will be, as I said, self-standing. The conservation process is a longer process, but is included in the project that we have prepared. Is not for these days. I'm not going to check all this. What I can tell you is that we estimated the time, we estimated the progress of all the operations, and we did all the necessary tests for the material. This is the mortar that we will use to consolidate and fill the gaps. We did the test for cleaning, and more important, we did the risk assessment plan of the monastery and the mosaic, telling us which are the active aggressors to the monastery and to the mosaic, and which is the priority of risks, that in number 1 is the earthquakes, given that Kutaisi is a pretty seismic area. So let's go back to the original questions. The mosaic is an original work? Yes. Did they use new materials? Yes, and also reuse material. Did they made it directly in situ? Yes, they made the mosaics directly in situ. Is the mosaic at risk? Definitely yes. No, I would say yes, yes, yes. What is the most serious problem of the mosaics? The detachment. The salts are a problem, but the salts can be removed. The detachment are a risk that can be fatal. Do we know the origin of the detachment? Yes, water vibrations. The intervention of Carlo Bacurazzo was well done. Yes, was providential. The metal pins will be removed. No, not at all. They will be checked. They will send deeper and covered with tessera, but they will stay in the body of the mosaic. The detached area, the gaps, will be consolidated and filled. Definitely yes. We want to bring back the same original package, the structure of the mosaic. The lacune will be filled with glass tessere. We are not aware of altering the authenticity of the mosaic because today we have the technology to document one-to-one what we do. So we will leave a clear evidence that the tessere that we have applied are the new tessere made in Venice specifically for this project. We did the same, we adopted the same solution in the mosaic of the Transfiguration in St. Catherine, and we obtain 100% of approval. There is one reason for doing this. The mosaic here is not a picture, is not a painting. The mosaic is a machine that reflects the light. And you can reflect the light only if you have glass materials. This is why they use glass, because into a dark church, they wanted to have the apse shining in the sun, transmitting the theological message. And the theological message is not something that you could transmit in the dark. You need something that at the end is an explosion of light, a different light at any different time of the day, in the morning, in the midnight, at midday, and in the evening. We don't want to give back a mosaic with 16,000 pixels that are abnormal. We want to give back the mosaic the beauty and the power of the original light. That's why we will use tessera made in Venice out of 3,300 different colors that they produce. And then, is it technically possible to reduce the risk? Yes, today we can say, yes, we can reduce the risk. So what we recommend is that after phase 3 will be over, you proceed with phase 4, that will be a campaign for conservation that will last 4.5 years, will be divided in 9 site work campaigns of 2 months each, made of 5 conservators of time. 2 months each, because consolidation need time. Mortars need time to set. We cannot run, and we don't want to run with this mosaic. 900 years is a long time. 4 years is nothing comparing the life of this mosaic. So I want to conclude saying that this was this year was a mosaic of different minds and expertise who worked together with great enthusiasm, I had the opposite problem that I normally have with my team, because I had to force people to go far away to work, but in this case everybody wanted to come. So I couldn't stop 27 persons to come all together at the same time. We involved 4 universities, 2 centers for research to arrive to the solution, to the project that we delivered to the committee for the rehabilitation of Gelati. I want to close just saying that many people thank us for doing this. I think this is unacceptable, because it is us that have to thank Georgian people who gave us the privilege of getting in contact with such extraordinary reality and such extraordinary mosaic. Again, we do a profession that is never the same. Every time is a new, beautiful adventure. And clearly, I am a lucky boy, because at the end of my career, it was given to me the opportunity to help the mosaic of Gelati. I couldn't dream anything better than this. The mosaic of Gelati is a book. It's a book made of 1,000 pages. We just open the cover and maybe the first or the second page. Our task, and the task of everybody now in the future, will be first to save this book that is a book of art, of history, of technology, of theology. Please save this book and make this book accessible to everybody in the full spirit of humanism of the academia and the monastery of Gelati. Thank you very much.